I'm a proponent of taking advantage of 10 to 30 minutes of time to stitch or quilt. Minutes spent sewing result in finished projects. When today's guest proposed the idea of 30-minute doll clothes, my interest piqued. I questioned, wondering if they could be made in truly 30 minutes. Joan's answer was yes. And our guest is Joan Hines, author and designer of great-looking doll clothes. Thanks for being with us, Joan.
Well, thank you, Nancy. I'm happy to be here. With just a little bit of sewing knowledge, you can create many garments for your doll in just 30 minutes or less. Let's begin with the birthday party trio. The double skirt, camisole, and leggings are mix and matching pieces that are a breeze to create. I'll share with you how flat construction tips streamline the process.
30-minute doll clothes, that's what's coming up next on Sewing with Nancy.
Sewing with Nancy, TV's longest-airing sewing and quilting program with Nancy Zieman, is made possible by Baby Lock, a complete line of sewing, quilting, and embroidery machines and sergers. Baby Lock, for the love of sewing. Madeira, specializing in embroidery, quilting, and special effect threads, because creativity is never black and white. Koala Studios, fine sewing furniture custom built in America. Clover, makers of sewing, knitting, quilting, and embroidery products for over 25 years. Experience the Clover difference. Amazing Designs and Class A Needles.
We're going to start with a very festive trio for dolls. And Joan, this is a great design.
Well, thank you, Nancy. This is a combination of three garments, and it's a camisole top, and then a gathered skirt that has 2 layers of fabric, and then the leggings that go underneath that are made of a knit fabric.
And the sewing is simple, and you've chosen brightly colored fabrics, and you have 2 strips for the skirt.
Yes, the first thing you need to do is to cut your strips, and the top one is a little bit shorter than the bottom one.
You're using about the width of the fabric.
Right, but you do need to make sure that they both line up, that they're the same width if you're using different brands. And then you need to serge the bottom edges and the side edges, and then you would stitch those just at your sewing machine as they're turned under.
And it's nice to serge the edges because of kids playing and playing to keep the doll clothes, to keep them from raveling.
Absolutely.
And then you meet them together as one.
Right. Now you'll treat it as one from now on.
Now the gathering technique that Joan likes to use is to drop the bobbin thread, and here you can see, just set your machine in a straight stitch, take 1 stitch, draw up the bobbin thread, and pull that thread as long as the skirt panel, and then zigzag over the thread, the bobbin thread. And I like that technique too, Joan, because you can't pull out when you have the bobbin thread. Here's the bobbin thread. You can't pull that out.
Absolutely.
Now, before you pulled or gathered, you did some quarter marking.
Yes, I gathered the skirt, or I measured the skirt in 4 sections before it was pulled up, so that I know how to match it. The waistband is just a simple piece of fabric, and the ends are stitched.
Or pinned in this case.
And pinned and then when it's turned to the right side, then you would quarter mark the waistband, and then you would match it right here and stitch along.
And just serge that, or zigzag that
right,
edge.
to finish that edge.
That's all there's to it. Now this cute little detail happened because?
I decided to just pull up this skirt top panel so you could see the underskirt, and I put it just slightly off center, and then I just did a few hand stitches to hold it down.
That's it. And the closure is just a sturdy hook and eye.
Right, it won't pop open.
And 30 minutes later, ta-da!
You have a skirt.
Less than 30 minutes, you can do the camisole.
Yes, that is a very easy one.
And for the camisole, there are 2 pattern pieces, very simple looking. You can see we have the main body, and then there's a band.
Right.
Now this band, you did some pre-pressing.
Yes, I did. I serged the bottom edge of it, and then I pressed it 1/4 of an inch under, basically the serging width.
And then there's some ribbon.
Right. The ribbon ribbons make easy straps. And I just cut a length of ribbon. The measurements are in the book accompanying. And I just made a V and pinned it here in the center. And then it's about 1.5 inches from the edge. And then I pinned it again.
Now here's the trick. You meet the right side of the band to the wrong side of the camisole.
Exactly.
And when you sew with 1/4 inch seams, we didn't mention that, but all the seam allowances are 1/4 of an inch.
Right.
And you want to bring up the little iron. We can press, you just press this forward. And then there is some top stitching to stitch along the lower band, to turn under the sides, the serged width to turn under the hem. And if you add a hook and loop tape to the back, wow, when I was a little girl, we didn't have hook and loop tape. That's
right.
That's a great thing.
Very easy for kids to use.
You know, little person could sit on your lap while you're doing these sewings and help create clothes for their little doll. And here's some leggings. This is a really speedy piece if you have little scraps of fabric.
Absolutely. The knit fabrics work well for this. The pattern piece is just one piece for both sides, and we've got it marked here center back and center front, but they are interchangeable. The thing you do have to remember is that the widest part is the waist and the lower one are for the legs.
And you sew one seam and open it up. And then the elastic is measured on the elastic, and then you would just stretch and zigzag into place.
Right, and if you don't cut it exactly at that mark, you have something to hold on to as you're pulling across.
Simple zigzagging, you'd use matching thread, but then you can see that you would stitch the side seam, and after sewing the side seam, stitch the legs.
Right.
So let me separate this so you can see that it's just one fell swoop. You'd sew the leggings, and in about
I'd say 10 minutes.
10 minutes, you would have the third component of our birthday party trio: the leggings, the skirt, and the camisole top. Dig through your fabric scrap box and search for a perky little print. With just a few straight seams and 30 minutes of time, you'll be able to create a skirt for your favorite little girl's doll. Spend another half an hour time and stitch a top. The result is a perky and pretty combo. These doll clothes really kind of make you smile, Joan. They're
sure
really
do.
sweet. And this little top is made, again, in a very short period of time with a very easy closure, and then a simple skirt. And you've made this so that you're not sewing in circles. You're going to have flat construction.
Right, right. The first thing that you would do is cut the top piece for both the front and the back, and then the skirt widths, and I chose to use contrasting fabric for that.
And the bands are just sewn across the top.
Right.
We have them right sides together.
So for the front, it's just one seam at the top and you're done. And for the back, it is the seam at the top just as you did before, but I have a stitching line there to use as a casing. And the reason for that is dolls do have different waist measurements. So this way it's easy to put on and it will accommodate the different sizes.
We'll be later using the elastic and bodkin to put it through. You saw earlier how to do the gathering. We're going to use that gathering technique on many clothes.
Yes, yes.
And the flat construction is sewing the front band to the front piece after gathering.
All it is just hemming the bottom and then stitching across the top.
So flat, and then here the back piece is the larger piece with a casing. We did this in contrasting thread, and then just use a simple bodkin and thread it through. Now we like to kind of cut that elastic after threading it through.
Right, it's about a 5-inch measurement, but again, you should measure your doll to make sure that it will fit properly.
And then after this has been hemmed, you'd tack it on one side and pull it to the right measurement, tack it again, maybe a little narrower than that, and then meet right sides together.
And sew the sides and you're all done.
Ta-da, it's done again. So very fast construction. Of the top is going to be lined, but don't be misled by the word lining.
Right, this makes it a lot easier. You don't have all the little facings to turn. And in this sample here, we have the contrasting fabric for the lining. So you'll need 2 fronts and 4 backs.
And we've sewn, or you've sewn the print together at the shoulder seams, the lining together at the shoulder seams, and done a little stitching.
Right. Then you would sew them together. You would stitch up the center back, around the neckline, around the armholes, and around the top and the bottom. So you're turning the fabric through the side seams, which makes it...
That probably takes the most time, maybe half a minute.
Right, right.
So you turn this right side out totally, and then just through magic, we have that already done. And here on this sample, how about that, Joan? It's been
Right.
turned right side out.
Yes, yes. I did make a mistake. The bottom and the top are not stitched on this particular garment because we're going to put in a ruffle. You could leave it plain if you chose to.
And we've pre-stitched the, pre-pressed the hem, and then you just meet the underarm seams, this cute little underarm seam, and stitch it. And after doing the stitching, you will then add the ruffle. Now the ruffle
could be pre-gathered, gathered fabric that you choose, but choosing an eyelet that's already gathered does make it go a lot faster.
And we have paperback fusible web. We've pressed down, press it over, and stitch.
And stitch.
The final touch will be, again, that hook and loop tape at the end, and there you have a perky top.
Your favorite little girl can have an extensive doll wardrobe using my simple patterns and speedy sewing tips. This sundress, the Speedy Sundress to be exact, is so quick to sew that you could create 2 dresses in just about the same time as sewing one of them. Simplified tips make it possible.
You'll find many of the techniques that Joan and I are sharing with you to be common in many of your designs.
Right, right.
And rather than threading elastic through a casing, in this little sundress, you have ribbon. It's sweet, easy to sew, and here's the pattern piece.
Right, you would cut out 2 of these for the front and the back.
And you could serge the edges first, just to kind of save time.
Right, but you don't have to. And then you would press the side edges 1/4 of an inch to the inside. And then
do some stitching.
Right.
Sew it down.
And then the top folds down, and you would measure about 1/2 inch or so, and you would stitch across this to make a casing.
So here's that casing, comparable to the casing we had for the elastic, but now you just thread through ribbon.
Right. And you will need 2 pieces for the front and the back, and then it will just tie at the shoulders. And a good tip to use to attach the straps is to mark it in the center with the pin and then take it to your sewing machine and just tack it down. The reason is with children playing with it, they will pull them out.
Sure. So after doing 2 or creating 2 pieces identical, before you sew them together, you could put a quick applique.
Right, and this one I chose to take some fusible web, and I have two colors of pink, and I cut out a flower here and fused 3 of them on there, and then the centers of the flowers I just put buttons.
Last step, sew the side seam, and if you didn't pre-hem it, then you could also stitch a hem around the edge. So with a few stitchings, really very few, create a cute little sundress out of just inches of fabric. This doll is set to attend an afternoon tea. Bolero jacket and dress, a perfect combo like tea and cookies, will delight any little girl. Let's take a close-up look at how to stitch the dress in just 30 minutes. Joan, the combination that you created has a little jacket and dress. Now, the jacket, we'll discuss a comparable construction for this in our second episode, but we're going to concentrate on this cute little outfit.
Right, this little yoke dress really works up fast. There are no side seams in either the top or the skirt, which does make it go faster.
And we have the yoke top is a funny little pattern piece.
It definitely is. There's little horseshoe shapes here for the armholes. And the first thing you need to do is to cut out 2 of these and then finish the edges if you like. And then you need to make straps.
This is about 9 inches in length and
Right,
1.5 inch wide, correct? And you stitched it down the center with 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. And that
Right.
seam allowance kind of becomes like the interfacing, but we'll finger press over the turner and then insert the wire section, and then wrap the end. You can use your favorite turning technique, but we really like this.
Right, it works real slick.
And then turn this right side out. Encourage it along a little bit. This is a really nice piqué that you've used. And then after the pressing, you can just press it down the middle. You cut it into 2 sections.
Right, there you have the 2 straps. And then they are placed on the garment, and you would need to pin them like these have been sewn in here.
Let's pin them here. They would be
Right,
they'd be pinned 3/4 of an inch from the armhole area.
right.
That's a itty bitty armhole.
Absolutely. And then you would place the facing on top.
And here we've stitched around the top, the sides, and when you turn it right side out, you'd have to do a little pressing, but you have the yoke created.
Right. The only thing you need to watch is that you don't catch the strap in your stitching, so
Okay.
it's a good idea to pin it down.
We did the gathering of the skirt, turn under the sides, turn under the hem, stitch it, and then gather the top. And here we've used that same gathering technique.
Right, right. So once this is pressed, you would quarter this one off just as you would do your skirt, and then stitch it.
Meeting right sides together. And one seam across the waistline. And then again, serging is great. If you have a serger, perfect time to use it because you can finish those seam allowances, make certain that the fabric will not ravel, and then some hook and loop tape would work out well. Now, some dolls are not made all the same size.
Right, right. So that one has just been moved over to accommodate a little bit larger doll.
So you can move over either side of the tape and then close it, and presto, you have a fast sundress made with some gathering techniques, turning, and a lot of straight stitching. Again, we'll show you a lined little jacket technique in the second program of this series, but this is a perfect tea time party outfit. Our next doll is ready to go shopping. The knit shirt, top, and skirt ensemble is the perfect outfit for a doll to wear during an imaginative meet me at the mall outing. Let's take a closer look at how each of these pieces can be made in just a few minutes. This is another 3-piece outfit with the camisole and then a little knit shirt, which you'll see in the second episode of our series, and then the gathered skirt. The camisole is just almost like that, making the yoke of the sundress. Joan,
Yes.
you've designed many pieces to be compatible.
Right. That one is just a little bit longer than the first one.
And when I show you the pattern piece, it'll remind you of that yoke on the dress. I just want to point out that with doll clothes, you may want to use that wrap corner technique I've shown on other programs, where you stitch off the edge and then wrap the seam allowance, stitch off the center front edge, and then wrap the seam allowance toward the garment before sewing the corner, so that the seam is perfectly stitched down. This will make it easier to turn corners sharply, right side out. I'll put the rounded end of the turner in, and as I invert it, the pointed end brings out the corner. And you would do the same to all corners or edges, and you can get sharp corners, but that wrap corner really works very well. You'd finish the inside by just turning in the hem and top stitching. So after you've created the camisole, you'll learn the knit top. Joan, you have the skirt ready to stitch.
Right. This is probably the easiest skirt. It's just a width of fabric, and then it has gathering at the top with elastic sewn over it. And the first thing you need to do is cut the width of fabric and then finish the bottom edge, serge and turn it to the wrong side and stitch. And then the top has been serged as well, because that will not be covered up and the gathering will ravel. So once it is serged, gather it using that same technique, and then we're going to put the elastic along the top edge, just pin it, and this elastic should fit the width of the fabric that you have here. And then I'm going to use a wide zigzag, and we're going to just stitch all the way across the top.
In Joan's, we make sure Joan had a stretch needle in your sewing machine. You know, you need to have those types of needles, and then all-purpose thread so that all the sewing can go very easily. And as she's doing the zigzag stitch, you'll see that we have contrasting thread. You'd use matching thread.
Right.
and you just zigzag away. And we'll let Joan finish this, just top stitching really with that zigzag stitch. Yet, with that stitching, it still has some give in it because of the stretch needle and the all-purpose thread. So the side seam and your skirt is finished. How many of you have ever had a makeover? Hairstyle, makeup, or wardrobe makeovers are all common, sought-after updates. We feel better after a makeover. It gives us a positive look. But did you ever think of being involved with a shelter or rescue mission makeover, transforming physical spaces into very inviting centers that give hope and encouragement? Terry Grail is our guest, and she has made shelter makeovers her mission. She founded Enchanted Makeovers and is here to share how we can stitch and then give encouragement to others. Welcome to Sewing with Nancy, Terry.
Thank you, Nancy, for having me.
Enchanted Makeovers started kind of as a whim.
Yes, it did. It was one call asking to paint a wall, and
In a shelter.
yes,
You have a background of interior decorating.
yes. I started a decorating business back in 2005,
Uh-huh.
and my very first client told her client about what I did for her, actually healing her and healing her home. And he ended up being the fundraising event coordinator for a women's shelter. And from that, he said, will you please just come and paint a wall?
Now, this is what the shelter looked like before you were involved. And a lot of sterile, used furniture,
Yes, used prison beds.
prison beds,
Yes.
and mattresses that were far from fresh.
Yeah, there was no dream in that bed.
And for women and children who go to these shelters, it was very depressing.
Yes, a lot of the shelters we work with are 6 months to a year
Sure.
that the women are staying there. So that's home for a year.
And you gave this shelter a home of Peel.
Yes,
This shot really shows a total makeover. And you painted the walls.
yes, we had murals done. The beds were donated. The lighting had to be redone. There was paneling that was falling off the wall. The carpet was stained. Everything had to be redone. And obviously, when that was done, I knew that this was way more than just decorating.
Sure.
This is from the inside out.
And you painted murals on the walls.
Yes.
And each bed is no longer, I think you told me that the bedspreads were,
They were used nursing home bedspreads that the women were using.
so they were leftovers. And now
Yes.
someone trying to change their life, raise their children in all this kind of hand-me-down rejects was pitiful.
Yeah, I felt that the shelters program was great, but the dorm was working against the program. There was really, I felt, how can the women go to bed and feel like there's any hope and wake up
Sure.
to any hope? It was just such actually there was a lot of negative energy that
Sure.
was in that room, and
Yeah.
something had to change.
What a great change. Then you also, I mean, we can't, as Sewing with Nancy viewers, send you paint and go paint help you with the shelters. Perhaps we could do it locally, but what we can do for Sewing with Nancy is you have the project of pillowcases.
Yes, a handmade pillowcase, and it can be from, I mean, we have a pattern on our site,
Sure.
and we love the detail. As you can see, the pom-poms,
Sure.
the lace.
And then you sometimes, viewers, or excuse me, the seamstresses, the stitchers, the quilters add a little extra gift
A little
inside.
extra gift, a journal.
Sure.
Sometimes in some of the pillowcases, there's a little
sorry.
plaque that's inserted with the inspirational quote. It really comes down to that we're really huge on handmade.
And this is sometimes the first handmade gift that they have received.
Yes. And many of the women have told me that they've never even seen their grandma or their mother even iron.
Sure.
To actually have someone take the time to make something handmade, they never felt that they were even worthy of that.
What a small thing we can do to make a big improvement on someone's life.
It's a huge gift.
Well, Terry, thank you for sharing this part of the story. Terry's going to be back on our next episode of Sewing with Nancy to share more about Enchanted Makeovers. And you can find out more about Enchanted Makeovers by going to our website, nancyzieman.com. You click on Nancy's Corner, and under the 2500 series, you'll find Enchanted Makeovers and Terry's name. Also at Sewing with Nancy, information can be at nancyzieman.com. You can watch current Sewing with Nancy programs online. You can read my blog and find out basically all things Sewing with Nancy. Terry, thanks for being my guest today, and thank you for watching. We'll be back next time with our second program of our series on 30-minute doll clothes. Thanks for joining us. Bye for now.
Nancy and Joan Hines have written a fully illustrated book entitled 30-Minute Doll Clothes that includes all the information and patterns from this two-part series. It's $14.99 plus shipping and handling. To order the book, call 800-336-8373 or visit our website at sewingwithnancy.com/2512. Order item number BK2512, 30-Minute Doll Clothes, credit card orders only. To pay by check or money order, call the number on the screen for details. Visit Nancy's website at nancyzieman.com to see additional episodes, Nancy's blog, and more. Sewing with Nancy, TV's longest-airing sewing and quilting program with Nancy Zieman, has been brought to you by Baby Lock, Madeira Threads, Koala Studios, Clover, Amazing Designs, and Class A Needles. Closed captioning funding provided by Rowenta. Sewing with Nancy is a co-production of Nancy Zieman Productions and Wisconsin Public Television.